Hi, Colleen O'Connell-Campbell, wealth advisor at RBC Dominion Securities and host of the Cash Rich Exit podcast. Nice to meet you. I'm joined by Tanya Guido, an estate planning specialist with RBC Wealth Management Financial Services. Tanya has over 30 years experience in financial services and is known for a thoughtful, transparent approach to insurance planning, helping clients and their advisors make confident decisions around personal and corporate strategies. She's joining me today to talk about insurance and risk. So, continuity planning, it's not a binder on a shelf. It's a system that protects cash flow, decision making, and the business itself if the owner is suddenly not available. Today, we'll make this practical and tie it directly to exit readiness. Great to have you here, Tanya.
Thanks, Colleen. Super excited to join you.
Super excited to talk about things nobody wants to talk about.
We're going to make it fun.
We are? Well, of course we are, because it's the two of us, right?
Good.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of hype out there about insurance and what it can do. But at the core, fundamentally, insurance is a product developed to cover a risk.
Mm-hmm.
And what are the basic risks? We pay taxes and we become an angel at some point. So, when we're talking about a business owner, you know, in your 30 years of experience, what are some of the core risks that really ought to be considered and thought about?
Right. So, what I find when speaking with business owners, number one, obviously, they're super busy, right? They're busy about making sure their business is running well. Operationally, things are flowing. Obviously, clients are happy. Funds are coming in. But what we tend to see is that there's no pause in ensuring that if anything were to happen to them, whether it's unfortunately getting sick,
Hmm.
being injured, or as you said, become an angel, that's where we definitely see things fall apart a little bit,
Hmm.
or there is struggles that happen. So what really breaks down first most of the time is going to be the cash flow, right? And again, it's going to really depend on whether the client is, a one-man show or whether the business is, multiple employees. But realistically, that cash flow is very important to keep a lot of things running. Your operational cost, your employees, whether there is some receivables and so on that need to be done. So
And
this
that's
is
because
where,
I'm just going to jump in, and that's because in so many businesses, the owner is an owner manager, or they're the owner and chief salesperson. So if they're not there to run the business development, bring in the new clients or what have you, new business contracts, clients, they're not there to check on the operations and make sure that invoices are going out, all of those things, then the cash flow can come to a halt, right? Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And I mean, I think that's where owners really need to take a step back and just figure out where are their gaps, because again, nobody wants to talk about insurance. Let's be honest, it's not a fun subject to talk about,
Hmm.
but it's an important one. And so how can insurance, like the disability and the critical illness insurance, and of course the life insurance, really help bridge that gap and make sure that wherever there is a gap, that something can be filled with it, and just sort of do some stress tests in your business, and what would happen if something were to happen to me for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. what would happen to my business, and really sit back and reflect it on that, and see how there are certain pieces of insurance that could help bridge that gap.
So let's talk about those pieces of insurance for a second, because most individuals know about life insurance. Most individuals know about disability insurance. Not as many know about critical illness. And then I think you could expand because there are some products available that are specifically suitable for business owner and their business. So maybe really high level, because we're not here to, solve all the issues or all the matters, but really just provide some insight and some things to think about if you're a business owner, talking about covering some core risks. So if we could go through those products and if you could dive in a little bit.
Absolutely. So the first and foremost, the one thing I think that is super important that many of us may or may not know is most of these insurances that we're going to talk about, if not all, are given to you tax-free. Okay, there's not a lot of stuff that we get in Canada that's tax-free, and insurance is one of them, as long as it's set up properly. I'll kind of preface that. Critical illness is something that maybe isn't talked about enough, in my humble opinion, in this industry. But I believe that through the media and the people we know and some of the stories that we hear, it is something that is probably one of the most underserved solutions and ultimately products out there in the Canadian market. So what critical illness is in a nutshell is you as the individual, in this case owner, would receive a lump sum tax-free check in an amount that was obviously put forth when we did the application, should you suffer one of 26 illnesses. And the primary ones that are covered, or that are claimed on, I should say, is going to be your heart attack, cancers, and strokes. Those are your top claimed illnesses under these types of contracts. There's, of course, a definition, but a lot of what used to be within these types of policies have gone away. So something like, you have to survive 30 days. That's still going to be inside of your cardiac coverages, but not so much in any of the other ones. But there are things like loss of a limb, paralysis, loss of eyesight, dementia, acquired brain injury. There is a host of different illnesses that, again, if something like this were to happen to you, depending on how you have it set up, can either go to you or go into your business tax-free. And that is something huge that can cover, again, some help with that cash flow.
Yeah, going back to that core gap that you see when something suddenly and unexpected happens to the business owner, cash flow is
Definitely.
affected. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
The
critical
next
illness.
Yeah, the next one's going to be disability, right? Insurance. And, this one here, again, I think is definitely a lot more known, specifically to the Canadian population. You're employed by an employer, large or maybe small, and you do have that group coverage. So there is much more of you are injured or you're sick, but you have to be, those it could be anywhere from 30 days, 60 days, 90 days before the insurance company will start paying you a monthly income. This is where, think of this one more like, again, an annuity, where you're going to get something every month, tax-free again, as long as it's set up properly, that you can, again, use within your business to take care of those cash flow costs and other things that go on. We'll talk, I think, a little bit more about, partnerships and buy sells and different things like that, because there's obviously solutions that fit that category.
Yeah, we're going to come to that we'll have another session about that, because we really want to cover the core here today. So disability. And it's so expensive.
Yeah. So
You
the
hear
way
that, don't you? I've heard that plenty.
a lot, a lot. And listen, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it's not. Okay, it is. But when we think about it, uh, do we, and I'm gonna go real core here, but
Mm.
do we cover ourselves for our home? Do we cover ourselves for our cars? Or not ourselves, but do we cover our cars? And I don't know about you, but boy, every year that my car insurance renewal comes in, it keeps going up and up. It's expensive. And that's a car.
Hmm.
Protect yourself. Like you are really that human that's going to be able to keep, maybe you are the sole provider of the family or what have you. Your health, that's like super important to cover. So
Hmm.
yes, it's expensive, but in relative terms, if you can't do what you're doing and there's no income coming in,
Hmm.
don't see that
I mean,
that
I've put the argument forward over my time in financial services and wealth management, and it's, even like especially the younger we are, because what is your greatest asset as you're building your wealth? Your greatest asset is really your ability to generate cash flow, to generate income, and to build and accumulate to a certain point. So it's expensive, and yet, what is the alternative if something untoward happens?
exactly 100%. And I always say this, like something is better than nothing. So we may not, consider getting what I'll say is like the Cadillac version, but if we could find something in the middle that helps at least partially, to me, that's better than having nothing,
Hmm.
right? So I think that there's a compromise that we could, the owners probably should consider versus not talking about it or doing nothing at all.
So critical illness, disability. Funny, you started with critical illness and disability and not life insurance, because I think most of us, when you think insurance, if you're not thinking about the car and home and all of that, you're thinking life insurance. But you
Mhm.
left that out so far. Is that what we're going to talk about next, or is there something in between?
No, I mean, and certainly it's important. Don't get me wrong. But I believe that, and what we see is certainly we tend to be sick before we pass away. And with medical advancements, and again, this is nothing new that nobody has already heard or maybe
Mhm.
experienced themselves, right? Medical advancements and things that are able to no longer, doesn't automatically put you in a position of not being on Earth, is that those other two coverages I feel are more priority in some respects, but insurance, life insurance is still an important category. I'm not saying, put that at the bottom, but I believe that that's where likely, let's be honest, if something happens to you and you're no longer on Earth, your business, unless you have a succession plan, unless
Well,
have
right.
something.
And we're going to talk about that in some upcoming pieces, right? But it's also kind of like, well, if you're not here, it's somebody else's problem. Now we don't want it, we don't want you to think like that. We want you to think about who are the people that are important to you, whether it's your significant other, children, those that work with you in your business as your team and staff, or your suppliers and customers. You want to take care of all them. But reality is the critical illness and the disability coverage, they take care of you while you're still here, but have some challenges. So it's, I guess, the question of covering morbidity versus mortality, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And again, I think that they're all important, don't get me wrong, but like I said, I think that, the ones whereby I'm going to be off of, off work, not able to do what I do every day for a short period of time, that's where we definitely see more of that breakdown and unfortunately where we see a business will fall apart, right? Because they just don't have the funds to or the, what they need to continue moving forward.
And then what you generate from that business as part of what you bring into your personal life and your household to live. So it does boil down to cash flow. So yeah, I've spoken on my podcast a lot about this idea in business of, revenue is vanity and profit is sanity and cash flow is sovereignty. And that's what was a little bit coming to mind, not, in the same precise way I've referred to it in the intentional building an intentional exit, but you have to start at the beginning, and it doesn't matter how you look at it. Cash flow is like the blood running through our bodies. It's like the fuel in our cars. It does provide sovereignty, really, the ability to have choice and decisions. And so actually I think that's the thought that I'd like to leave with this video that we're putting out into the world, and just suggest here, Self-Made Nation, that if in fact you're thinking about your business and thinking about this foundation, it's part of getting ready for what might come down the road. And, maybe it's jumping ahead, but in, an eventual succession or sale, um, got to deal with the foundation first. So if you'd like to just explore any of this further, you can connect with me, Colleen.Campbell at rbc.com is my email. If you would like to think about what your wealth gap may be and how insurance might fit into that, also reach out to me, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode. And before I leave you, please note, all opinions expressed by me and any guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinion of RBC Dominion Securities. This video is for information purposes only. Before acting on anything you hear or see, consult a qualified professional. Insurance products are offered through RBC Wealth Management Financial Services, Inc., a subsidiary of RBC Dominion Securities, Inc. This content is produced for Canadian residents of the province of Ontario. I'm a wealth advisor with RBC Dominion Securities, a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund.